And when that conversation is occurring in the evangelical community, it's an extraordinarily striking thing, and again, politically, could be disturbing for both parties.
I agree with David. I think this is a real opportunity, not just for Democrats, but for Republican leaders as well. That what Anna's research demonstrated is something that I argue in my book, which is that people, average voters, are yearning for a discussion of issues that reach them not simply at their pocketbook, but also at their hearts. And we've had a one-sided values debate that's been filled by the right that would like to tell us what to think, and if we don't agree, then we're either immoral or amoral. And a lot of silence coming from the left. I think well-intentioned silence. People don't want to offend, don't want to impose their morality, but what they fail to do is recognize that most Americans come to their positions on public policy issues based on what they learned in Sunday school or in church or in the synagogue or the mosque, or from a good public school teacher or from a parent in a secular setting. And I think it's essential for our leaders from both sides to address the idea of shared values. And when I talk about, in my book, a compassionate community, it's the same idea as this politics of common good that we've been hearing about. It's the idea that there are certain shared values that we all agree on, whether we're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, atheist, agnostic, Democrat, Republican, or independent. And that we're going to have to agree to disagree, and we're not going to have to ask anybody to moderate their own faith or ask any non-believers to adapt to a religious standard. But if we can truly identify those shared values, we can work together on what I think are the true moral outrages of the time. The moral outrage that almost 40 million of our neighbors are living in poverty. The moral outrage that God's creation is being threatened by climate change, and we've got to do a much better job at honoring our biblical or moral notion of stewardship. The moral outrage that our school systems are almost as segregated as they were before Brown versus Board of Education. And if we can start on that common ground, debate the policies to come up with the details, agree to disagree on some of these big picture hot button issues, but focus on where we as Americans share our values, I think that's when not only we can move forward as a country, but we can be a lot more united and take away this red and blue country and make us all into one more cohesive union.
There's so many good issues and questions that have come out of the things that you've said. Jonathan, I want to pick up on something that you mentioned just as you were closing, because I think it is in some ways the elephant in the room. We are talking about a range of issues that people care about, this broadening of the menu, and I want to go back to that in a second. But I think a number of people are thinking and wondering, yeah, but what about some of the, quote, hot button issues? They aren't going away. People are still engaged around them. And for people like you, Tim, and Sam, and others here, when you're pulling together a coalition to work on issues of economics, issues of the environment, and you are building a coalition, and the coalition is hanging together, but you still have differences on some of those issues, and the American people are still asking about them, how do you navigate that? How do you keep coalitions together, and at the same time, how do you appropriately address some of the differences that are out there?
Do you want me to address that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Remember the
I think that one of the values I talk about that's a shared value of all of us, whatever our religious or political beliefs, is the value of life. And unfortunately, the value of life has been debated in the most polarizing issue of modern times. And I think David mentions in the book probably the most polarizing issue since slavery, which is abortion. And we are going to have to, as a nation, understand that on the fundamental focal point of that debate, legalization of abortion, that we're never going to agree, we're never going to be able to compromise, and that both sides of the debate are going to have to respect the other, and respect that people of sincere faith will do the balancing of the value of life differently and come to different conclusions on that issue. But I think that there really is a chance of finding common ground on abortion, even on abortion, which is working together to reduce the numbers of abortions in the country, working together to not only promote abstinence but also medically safe sex education, medically accurate sex education, to work to help understand that the links between poverty and the abortion rate, and if we can fight the underlying causes of poverty, then we're going to reduce the abortion rate in this country. And if we can understand that there is common ground even on the most polarizing issue, where I think that we not only can help solve a problem that we all agree on, but we can also move together on some of these other contentious issues that are dividing us.
Tim, do you want to
Yeah, I mean, we believe I would have to say this is probably a pulse on the country that we believe has, actually. And that is that we have very different ideas about the wedge issues. And what we've decided is this, that if the wedge issue is the most important issue for you as a person of faith, then what I would describe as the ultra-religious right has a place for you. If that's the only thing you want to talk about, then go talk there. And but it so happens that most Americans, as we've seen, want to talk about other things. Imagine going to Thanksgiving this week, and the only thing that you're allowed to talk about at the dinner table is the issue of the host for the entire dinner. Now, some of us may go through Thanksgivings like that, but let's hope that we could at least go to another room, maybe to the living room, to talk about things that we care about. You know, we believe is actually inviting people who have been quiet and have been, well, you know, Ohio is a place filled with respectful people. And there's a great line in A Prairie Home Companion that we're Midwestern. You know, we just will be quiet about something until it goes away. Well, some of us are finding that that didn't work. So we're raising the issues that we care about most passionately. And they are health care, and they are, you know, poverty. They are education. We are in a state where the legislature has 4 times been mandated by the Supreme Court of Ohio to change the structure of the education system in Ohio, and they have not done it once. And to me, they should all be put in jail. I mean, you know, if I would not show up and follow a court mandate, what would happen to me? I mean, you know, that sounds severe, but the point is that we have been charged as a people to raise the questions that the people who are elected are not responding to. So, you know, I think what we're finding is that people really do want to talk about these things. They really want to act on them. They want to see policies that make a difference. And so we're finding tremendous encouragement. The other thing is that we're finding faith groups beyond particularly the Judeo-Christian faith feel very isolated, and we believe has given them an opportunity to be in coalition with people who also share their common values and who share concerns about their children that have not been articulated in the mainstream of political discourse. So, you know, I think what we're seeing is that wedge issues, if that's all you want to talk about, then there's a place for you. The challenge will be, and we saw this actually when Jim Wallace was in town, the challenge will be as we gather with more moderate white evangelical leaders, and Jim is pulling good people in. He's done a great job of bringing people to the table, that we're going to have to talk about some of those tough issues because they are heart and soul issues in certain communities. And so it's going to happen. So far it hasn't, but we're working on that. Again, we have to build relationships first. We haven't been talking to each other for years. So we first of all got to form a relationship so that we can work on some common ground issues.
Just looking at it from a little more historically, when President Bush commanded the largest kind of coalition of both the very religious and the moderate religious, both in terms of intensity but also in terms of identity, it was when he was more moderate, whether it was, in fact, in the administration, in the faith-based initiative or not, when he talked about compassionate conservatism. It was when you saw, particularly toward the end of this Congress, that discussion moved very far right, so that you had the constitutional amendment on gay marriage, and you had defending under God and the Pledge of Allegiance, and a variety of other sort of wedge issues being fought out in the Senate. You actually saw him lose that centrist ground among folks who were more moderately religious. And one of the things that you saw in this election was a very large shift of the center over to the Democratic side. Catholics, the moderately religious, the people who are not religious. I think that, you know, the challenge in keeping these coalitions together is trying to stay in the center when you have various base voters that you need to turn out to vote and need to vote, you know, in overwhelming margins for you. I think the challenge for Democrats and the opportunity for Democrats is to do the same thing on their side. So, for instance, right now you see a piece of legislation